Here we go.
What are you thinking of, Doc? You're trying to kill us all.
Maybe.
All right, and we'll take it off there and hide that and bring him in. Okay, hey everybody. Star Trek, the original series, season 3, episode 9, the Tholian Web is over, and it has been since 1968. But we're just getting started here on Live Long and Podcast. I'm Dave Mader coming at you with Star Trek TV and movie reviews, and we're here streaming live on Facebook. And you may also be watching us on YouTube or listening to the audio version. Welcome, everybody. Hey, let's talk about the Tholian Web here on our original series Rewatch. I'm joined by a fabulous panel today. First, we'll start with my dad, Ted. How are you doing, Dad?
I'm doing great.
Good. Okay. Joining us once again, we have Jody Simpson. How you doing, Jody?
I'm well, thank you.
And introducing a new panelist here on our TED Trek Thursday original series rewatches, Karen Rondeau. Hey, Karen.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for asking me and inviting me.
Hey, we're glad to have you here, and we're going to talk about the Tholian Web, which is maybe one of the most beloved episodes of the original series, perhaps. So, well, I'm going to start with you, Karen, because you're new to our crew here, and so welcome. And what do you think about the Tholian Web?
Well, let me tell you something. I have to disagree whether it's one of the best episodes ever, because I must tell you, from a female perspective, anytime that James Kirk was kissing someone, that was the best episode. I'm telling you right now.
Okay, so you have a bit of a crush on Captain Kirk.
Absolutely. But I hadn't seen these episodes since years and years ago. And then when you invited me, I thought, well, let's give this a go. And it was so much fun to see those guys again, like in their youth. It was I loved it. I just loved it.
Yeah, no, great. Okay, and we're going to dive into the specifics of the episode. I know you've taken thorough notes. And Jody, we're going to go back to you now. Tholian Web rewatch. How do you feel this compares on the original series rewatch?
I liked it. It's one of my favorite episodes from the original series to begin with, so I'm a little biased in this scenario. It's a good episode. It's got good structure, good pacing. It's the only thing I really don't like is some of the costumes, but past that, it's not too bad. Those spacesuits are just ridiculous, but you know.
Yeah, I want to talk about the spacesuits.
I like the mesh screening. I think is probably the best part of the whole thing. It's like having a screen door on a submarine. It's not going to function.
Right.
But, obviously we had to work with what we had in the '60s, and that's it. Still was a good effect for the time.
Season 3 budget cuts.
Yeah, season 3 budget cuts, of course, probably played into that, but certainly a good episode, I think.
And back to you, Dad. Tholian Web. Is this one you like?
Yes, it's classic. It's no doubt about it. It's a classic episode. There's no Kirk kissing episodes. As a matter of fact, he was in that spacesuit pretty much the whole episode. Didn't show up till the end. But it was a good episode because these Tholian guys, they're pretty bad dudes, but the boys took care of hthem in the end.
Let's talk about the Tholians too.
It was looking grim.
The title character, the title alien of this episode is the Tholians, who I just want to show here. Let's bring them in as we go here. Let's maybe go full screen on them. There they are. Now that's the Tholians. The title from now they are a silicone-based life form, meaning they are made of sand, and they are crystalline actually in who they are. And they have 8 legs, kind of like an insectoid, and they this is all true.
Like a spider.
And they're really fun in this episode, like a crystalline spider of sorts. Yes, and that's them. But the Tholians are a fun race, kind of an antagonistic race here for the original series. Let's bring me back in. They're fun. The Tholians. Okay, and we kind of alluded to the space suits. Maybe Jody, since you brought it up, let's talk about the space suits, which I also will show here because we spend a lot of time looking at these things. in this episode. It's so bad. It's just
Ridiculous. I couldn't stop laughing when I saw that.
Them screen door helmets are the best.
and just like their name is put here, and it just looks like it was made in like a school arts and crafts fair or something.
It probably was.
Yeah. Like I kind of like I appreciate the fact that when he touches like the little orange part that it makes the communicator sound and whatnot. But yeah,
did you also notice
quite
that the communicator
happened
to be linked right to his crotch?
Yeah, it's just like even like these like vertical things that go
the
right
blue one and the red one
here,
go to their legs.
Maybe he gets a charge.
Just kind of disappears. Yeah.
Maybe he gets a charge.
Yeah, maybe it's like a toy at the same time.
Yeah,
we're
I don't remember how many of these.
Here, though, so we probably,
I just was like, whoa, this dates this so badly. And normally, I'm pretty faithful to the original series. Like, hey, let's stay true to what it was. But I think this is, if they wanted to retcon these, I'm fine with it. Like, they don't have to stay faithful.
Absolutely no peripheral vision. None.
Oh yeah.
None.
They're the worst designed spacesuits in the history of the world. Like they couldn't have made these any more impractical than they could have already had. Like they were just, everything about them's terrible. Like just, and when they take them off and that one piece is still sitting like way up here, it's like, so they take off the helmet and then there's like this one, like I guess it's like there's like a piece of it just sitting here, but it's like blocking like part of their vision. So it's like they're talking away and there's literally a piece right here as they're talking. It's like, whatever.
It's like they didn't plan, like they're like, oh, we designed this thing, but we didn't plan for the helmet to be taken
and
off
as
like
Ted
that.
said earlier, like you barely see Kirk in this episode at all. Like it's a very Spock episode, really. Yeah,
Spock and McCoy. It's a lot about their relationship. It's sort of like Dad's gone and it's two bickering brothers.
Almost, yeah. It really is.
House.
Yeah, in a way, you can definitely relate to that. Anybody who has kids can definitely relate to that. They literally are bitching at each other for the whole episode. He's like, McCoy's like, you're doing this wrong. Yeah.
I don't remember Spock being so harsh. I know that he always stated things straight and logical, of course, but he was pretty harsh in this.
He was only harsh in that one episode that we recently watched, where he was a complete dick the whole time. The Pike one, the one with Pike.
Oh yeah.
When Pike's in the chair.
Yeah.
But I do notice that season 3, Spock gets kind of bitchy. Like it's almost like he's like, I've had enough of your shit, Kirk. Like, I'm done.
And McCoy, I think he's had enough of McCoy after 3 years in space.
But anybody who sits there and says like, Spock and Kirk are some, long lost friends or something like that, like they obviously aren't watching hard enough, because they really aren't that much of the ways of friends. Like they really
not in the way that McCoy and Kirk
have a much better bond than Spock and Kirk, for sure, I believe. Yeah.
It's more professional, I find, between Spock and Kirk.
Yeah,
right. Because that's kind of true to his relationship. And like, and I just want to ask: like, does anyone else think that McCoy is a tremendous pain in the ass in this episode?
His character is terrible in this episode. Like,
because they're like, Spock says to him, I don't know how many times, "Hey, we got this outbreak. Hey, you're the doctor.
Yeah.
Why don't you go do some doctoring?"
Something? Yeah, it's like it really is, and it gets back to that comment that you already made, where it's almost like bickering brothers. It really is kind of like that. Like I have 2 kids in my house right now, and it's just like that. Like I'm surprised one of them is not saying, "You're a fucking doctor, go do this." It's like that kind of thing. But
yeah, Dad, do you think it's that because like they actually do think that Kirk might be dead, and so McCoy was like, I was used to being able to do whatever I wanted when Kirk was in charge. I got to come on the bridge and give him a hard time about every decision he made. And now Spock's the captain and I hate it. So
Daddy Spock is here. Yeah.
I think it's funny that every time whoever's in charge has to head right to that chair. You can't be captain from wherever you were standing before. You have to head right to that chair.
Once you're in the chair, you
and the
kind of
only
like
person
command
that I find that
You
ever
gotta sit
walks
in the
over
chair.
to that.
Absolutely.
Everybody who walks over that chair does it differently, but the only one who does it nicely is Scotty. Because if you ever notice Scotty, whenever he's in charge and he has the con, he walks over to the chair, but he very rarely sits in it. he usually just kind of does that Riker pose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually
he does
stands
that
by
kinda-
it.
He's like,
Like
you know,
he
that kind of
does this. Well, even when Kirk leaves him in charge in the beginning of the episode, as soon as the transporter's not working,
Yeah,
he's like,
"Go on."
whatever, I'm out of here. Sulu, run thing.
It's so true though, and a lot of there's so much
Right.
inconsistency with the characters during the original series. Like we get them one season they'll be like this, and then another season they'll be slightly different, and then another season. I guess it's supposed to show that they progress during the 5-year mission, but I don't know. It's just Spock is almost intolerable in the 3rd season. Like he's such a dick. Like
I don't know. I tend to side more with Spock.
Spock was
I always
what
more,
they do with McCoy.
well, I'm not saying I don't like the character. I'm just saying he's kind of a dick. Like and McCoy is just useless in this episode.
Yeah.
Like compared to the other episodes, he's very
both
useless in
are.
this episode.
Well, McCoy, okay, but to his use, he does eventually invent.
Well,
the
he always
antidotes
does. They only have 50.
using poison, Klingon.
They have to
nerve
do it within
gas.
45 minutes, Dave. Only McCoy can do that. We need McCoy for
Right.
for COVID.
Yeah, really.
No,
In a heartbeat.
no, the whole premise of this episode is that the USS Defiant,
Yeah, he'd
which is a
solve
sister
missing
ship
instantly.
to the Enterprise, has been missing for 3 weeks. The Enterprise has been sent to
The
look for the
Defiant.
ship.
Yeah.
The Defiant, the USS Defiant, which is 1764 instead of 1701.
It is,
Right. And they beam over there and they kind of realize the crew has killed themselves. They can't even properly scan it. It's sort of phasing in and out of space.
Okay. I got to talk about something in this. Okay. So when they get onto the bridge, they see the captain of the Defiant, and he's got like his broken neck, and it's all like puffed out and shit. That was the coolest thing, I thought. I saw that and I was like, wow, that's kind of neat. His neck is broken. All right.
But how could they all die
Right.
at the very same time? So they're all fighting each other, but they die at the same time.
Here's the bigger problem I have, and I don't know if it was only on my copy or if you guys watched the same type of episode, because I watched the remaster. So the remaster usually has different. Yeah, it usually has like
version.
the CG in it, like so the ships are all CG instead of models. But when they're approaching the Reliant is glowing fucking green. Yeah.
Defiant.
Defiant.
Yeah. Because
The Defiant's glowing green. And wouldn't that be the first indication that you shouldn't go on that ship?
Well, just the fact that their scanners can't scan it,
Yeah.
but they have to see if there's survivors.
I don't know. You know what? Ship's glowing green in the middle of like space. You might want to.
And it has and the ship had no sustenance.
I would send one of those guys in the.
Determined that the ship
Why
had
would
no
they send one
mass.
of those guys in a red shirt?
Well, they should have sent a whole bunch of them over.
Yeah.
They have an endless supply of
I
those
just
guys.
don't. Like, I just think they had a bad doctor on that ship because McCoy eventually does invent the cure to this space madness or whatever it is that plagues the crew. And it's I don't know how many episodes we've watched. Like, I know we've rewatched 11 as part of this podcast, and how many times the Enterprise just finds a ship just like theirs, and the crew's all dead. At least twice in our 11 episodes that we've rewatched, because we saw it in the Omega
crew.
Glory where they. It was the
lots
US.
of dead
Was it the
crews.
Constellation? I think in that one. And then I don't know. Like, so yeah, these ships are always getting lost. But yeah, like so they beam over there. They kind of realize. Yeah, I don't know how they all died at the same time or how there's so little like information. But like eventually they realize that the ship is sort of phasing out and they need to get out.
You know
of
what
it.
I call that?
But they
right?
can only beam.
You know my theory on that, right? In the Star Trek universe.
In the transporters?
No, everything. When it comes to this type of stuff, it's the convenience factor of Star Trek. It's always
the convenience factor because it's like, oh well,
Everybody's
guess
dead.
what? Like we can only beam 3 of
Yeah.
you, and of course it's going to go
Kirk's
bad
like,
for Kirk.
I'll stay
Whoever is
behind.
going
They
to
only
stay
have an
behind.
hour. They only have an hour.
Yeah, they only have an hour, and it's just they did it, but then they
Karen,
lose them, right?
Karen,
And
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you're such a big Kirk fan, how did you feel with this episode? Because you didn't get a lot of Kirk.
I really didn't. I felt denied. I got way too much of Spock. I got way too much of him. I can only tolerate so much of that. But I just think, so I really did miss my Kirk. I thought I'd see more of him. But when Uhura saw the vision of Kirk, I just loved that. There he is, the vision.
He's alive, Doctor. He's alive.
But you know, the best part was when
Aurora,
they're
yes.
on.
Well,
They
she was
realize they realize they have to get back to the Enterprise, and they say beam them up, and the guy's face on the transformer machine, because obviously it's malfunctioning as usual, and he just goes. It wasn't working.
Oh yeah,
And then
O'Neill.
he comes up with the wrench. He's holding a wrench.
Right. We better get Scotty.
The one
down
thing
there.
I've learned from this series, and we've done, how many episodes of this have we done now with Ted?
11.
This is the 11th episode with Ted. So when they originally came to me, Karen, and they said, hey, we want to do a rewatch, you know, you want to rewatch it? It's been like, well, I haven't seen it in years. Why not, right? And it's one thing I've learned is you have to have some rose-colored glasses sometimes with this series, because
The original series stuff. Yeah.
Like Ted, I say to
Well,
Ted all the time. Ted thinks
got,
every
like,
episode's great.
Years of there's 40 years of 40 years of technology that's happened after the series was done. You got to think like
I understand
1968.
that. Oh,
You
absolutely.
can't think like 19 or 2020.
But to give you an
Yeah.
idea, you know, there's you know, if we talk about like,
You
let's
gotta
say
cut
war
them a
films,
little
for instance. Yeah, we talk about war films. Bridge Too Far is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that has nothing in it. It's all practical everything, and you know, but I think in some scenarios, because we deal with the fact that it's sci-fi, it doesn't age as well. I think realism usually ages better than.
But it was when I was
Yeah.
watching it, when I was 10 and 8 years old, I was so impressed. This was like
course.
the best, out of this world, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and I remember watching. I remember watching the series premiere of Next Gen, and I remember watching that first episode, Encounter at Farpoint, and I remember thinking to myself, "This is cool." You know, it's like '89, and even then, for '89, even that was, what was it? '89? Was it '87? Excuse me.
87.
Even in '87, like they had better effects than that. But you know, it was still cool to see.
Yeah. It was only 20 years after this,
Yeah.
right? Like at 20 years later, things had changed quite a bit. But
Years,
yeah, like I think that we look at Star Trek now, we look at these spacesuits, we look at a lot of the effects. It is dated, but if you compare it to the other stuff at the time, even it's
pretty good.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like because you look at like Doctor Who from the same era, you look at
love
Lost
Doctor
in
Who,
Space,
but
you look at
my
a bunch of
God,
these shows.
the Doctor
Have you ever
Who,
watched Lost in Space?
Mm-hmm.
Don't bother with the
Lost
remake.
in Space?
Yeah,
It's terrible.
Yeah. No.
I didn't enjoy it. Anyway.
No.
Mhm.
Is it?
And so
Yeah, I
they
didn't see
spend so then basically we have and then when they get back to the Enterprise after they lose Kirk, then this space madness kicks in. Chekhov is the first to succumb to it.
Have you ever
'cause they're
wondered
just
why every time there's some sort of space madness, Chekhov gets it first? You ever notice that?
Because he can have lines like this.
We got a
I have a
clip.
line here that I loved.
And I like
He's a
him.
Russian.
I like him. And he just goes around. And then it's just a lot of music and da-da-da-da-da. But he's going right, like in the background, and then everybody who has this space madness, they change the camera angle to like this handheld 8mm view or something, and it's like Chekhov, are you there? Come on, right? So I feel like this episode had so much potential. It had so many ideas in it, but it's also like I don't know. I want to see how this plays out, but you also have the whole trying to save Kirk angle going on, and then the Tholians show up, and then it's you know, and that gives us our premise, which is they think Captain Kirk is dead, the Enterprise is trapped, and the crew is going insane. It's the Tholian Web that we're in,
Insane.
and
Same as what happened to the Defiant.
mm-hmm.
I love
there
it.
he is, Chaka.
And did you see Chekhov? The part of his hair starts back here, and it all comes forward.
Yeah, that was that monkey's hairdo from the time. So because the monkeys and that was very popular in the late 60s, they said, we need somebody like that on our show, and we'll make him Russian for whatever reason. I guess because the Russian space race, and they wanted to show that.
He's always the guy who gets everything
because
first.
Walter Koenig's not Russian.
He's a Russian.
Yeah, the Russian. Yeah, and that was always his character. The Russians invented everything. Yeah. He also said that Scotch was invented by in another episode was invented by Russians. An old lady in Leningrad, I believe he said. Yes, and so Spock's in command. We see this clashing with McCoy. Everybody's kind of slowly losing their mind, and Uhura is eventually the first one to see like a vision of Kirk, like sort of phasing in and out. But
it was just nice to see Uhura actually say something.
Yeah, they gave her more to do in this episode, more than they do in a lot of the other
third
episodes.
season, I think you see more of her, but it's very underused character.
Yeah, she's. I agree, and like, and they kind of give her sort of like a, I don't know, a great writing here. I think she she's just a little bit too overwhelmed by the whole situation, but.
Which I guess if you were in that situation, it was realistic to you, then yeah, I can understand it.
But it is interesting because
the other characters,
the men go nuts and are violent, and the women just cling to a man and fall into their arms.
It's called the 60s.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's like we never see this sickness affect any of the women characters, but we know that it does because obviously the entire crew of the Defiant killed each other, and there were women
Star Trek
on that ship.
Still has this problem with women, though, and it's a problem that they've always had, and they need to do better writing for women's roles because the women's roles are always stupid. They're ridiculous, and they're in some of the episodes we've seen, they're just downright degrading. Like they're just disgusting.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
like the space hippie one.
I don't disagree with you, but
God, that episode is.
The space hippie one. This one, I don't think. I just think Uhura could have been written a little stronger than she was, but
yeah, for sure.
She had more.
Yeah, no, and that's what I say. It was a nice change.
Okay, so as we go through the plot of this, like eventually, so let's talk about the Tholians, and they show up because they say this is our space. You may not be here.
Standard Star Trek plot.
Spock's like getting through to them, like, hey, we're like looking for rescue. And he's like, I don't see any ship, and eventually he's like, okay, I'll give you an hour and 3 minutes, and we don't like lies, so if you're lying to us, you're gonna be in trouble. He says. Commander Lysine, I think is his name, and
1 hour and 53
Spock,
minutes.
like, I guess he knows the Tholians. An hour and 53. That's what it was because they're waiting for Kirk to sort of reappear. They've kind of figured out that he's got a good, he has a chance of reappearing or beaming him back or whatever. And so when they realize that the Tholians coming into the area has sort of messed up their calculations, the Tholian just fires right on them, and so they end up in a little bit of a space battle, which not only takes out their engines for a bit, but puts them to be vulnerable because this is where a lot of McCoy's criticism was. You should have left. You should have got us out of here. The whole crew is going insane, and you're here still looking for the captain. No, I don't think Spock made the wrong decision. No, I think you can't.
No, but that's
he makes all the right decisions.
McCoy to bail on Kirk that easily.
That's true. Know? That's not very.
That was very unlike McCoy to bail on Kirk so easily.
Very unlike his character. Yeah,
no,
that's true.
He always would say to Spock, "Stay. You got to find the captain."
Yeah. What are you doing, man?
So that was a little confusing.
Yeah. You're right. It's very contrary to what you would think
almost
McCoy
like those
would
two characters, Spock and McCoy. Actually, the roles were reversed in this scenario. So maybe that's the mix-up because realistically, it's always Spock going, we got to get out of here, blah blah blah. And
I don't think that McCoy liked that there was a public health crisis and you would actually have to do some work.
The one thing I noticed in this episode, which I hadn't noticed before, but I'm sure has happened, is why does McCoy get a different uniform than everybody else? But it's a surgical sleeve. Everybody else has to wear the normal sleeves with the rankings on them. He has a rank,
right?
But
he wears.
It's not indicated.
He wears both. It's a variant. Okay. It's a doctor's.
Well,
variant.
I guess Crusher in Next Gen had a variant as well, so I guess that makes sense.
Can you show us that?
Because by the end he's wearing his long sleeve.
Jody?
I could probably find one. Keep talking. I'll find it.
Can you show us that?
But the other thing that I thought was funny.
Do you have it? Well, go ahead.
Okay.
Is they declared the captain dead too quickly. They said, "Oh, he must be dead." I'm thinking, wait a minute, no. And then
he disappeared on a glowing green ship. So, I guess
Right.
maybe
Yes, they did.
that's cause for saying he's gone, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
I agree with you, though. They definitely went a little too quick on that one, didn't they? Yeah.
So you see here, that's McCoy's short sleeve
Yes.
variant, right?
Yep.
Whereas he has this guy
Right.
next to him wearing the long sleeve, but by the end of the episode, he's wearing his long
Oh,
sleeve.
okay. So it was just some sort of thing that they decided to do. But I just
He wears
bugs
it
me
in
that
he wears it
doesn't-
in numerous episodes.
Yeah, well, I've seen it before,
Yeah,
but it never occurred to me, and then I'm like, wait a second. Oh, we lost Karen.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
The light's coming in wrong. I've got to move to the better light.
We understand.
Of course. Understand. Yeah.
Ah.
I just think McCoy is used to being on the bridge, just kind of criticizing
Yeah.
people. That's what he's
his
he's
job.
not doing doctoring a lot. Like as far as the doctors go, but he does figure it out.
he's
Like
the
obviously,
Troy.
because at one point, when they get to like, I guess it's a kind of a memorial service for Kirk, right? And Spock's like, "Why are you here? Why aren't you working in the lab?"
Don't
over
you
the
have
thing?" He's
something to
like,
do?
My staff, my team's got it. It's got nothing to do with it. Like,
I get the impression that maybe
That's when
McCoy's
another
just
guy
there
went
for
insane.
fun. Well, they keep going insane, and the standard response is take him to sick bay and put him in restraints.
Put him in restraints.
That's the same line he did like 3 times during the episode. Exact same line. No variation at all. The exact same line.
yeah, it's like this is silly. Okay, but the Tholians and the Tholian Web, because the Tholians are now pissed, and so another Tholian ship shows up after
Which
they
is
shoot at that
Very
at
cool.
Lysine.
Very cool. I'd imagine if I watched this,
Yeah, and they start like creating this little energy field structure that's going to trap the Enterprise.
What was
because
that
until they can get their
Tholian
engines
leader's
repaired.
name, Dave? What was the
Lysine?
Tholian leader's name?
Lysine.
Lysine?
Yeah.
Lysine. He's kind of weird. Like a sand-based
Well, he's a
dude.
Tholian. Yeah, he's Loxine. Loskine.
Yeah.
Loskine. Yeah,
Something
that's
like
his name. Yeah, we don't see a ton of the Tholians
We don't
but
need to.
we get a little bit after.
I
Yeah.
don't think you need
Okay,
to add
and
anything to the episode.
no, I don't. Not to this episode, but if you want to know more about the Tholians, I'm happy to tell you about them.
He's kind of scary bad guy, though.
He's not even much of a bad guy. He's kind of he's just annoyed that they're there.
He's
and
like the equivalent of like an MP or something. Like he's like military police. Like,
He's like, I'm sorry, you do not
you're
have
not
a
supposed to
permit
be
to
here."
be here.
yeah, move on.
Yeah.
Like it's not like he was even all that threatening. He was just kind of like, "You're not supposed
It's
to
a
be
COVID.
here.
You're not allowed. It's a COVID.
Like this is a restricted area. What are you doing here?" Like that's really all he did. And then he obviously threatened him after, but it was like but that's because Kirk and company are like,
I
"We're
guess
gonna
it
go
was just
through
the look
anyway."
of him.
Maybe. Well, he looked like a talking ruby. So it was like, what more do you want?
The whole scene where
He did.
it's the last orders from Kirk to Spock and McCoy, which is kind of what stops them from feuding with each other for the rest of this episode. It kind of like levels everything else where they're like, because Spock doesn't even want to bother. He's like, I got work to do. And McCoy's like, you got time for this. You can do this. We can go listen. And so it's like kind of like it's Kirk's like message to them if he dies. Hey, like McCoy, you need to be there for Spock, and Spock, you need to
What the
listen
hell
to
did he
McCoy
have
if
time to
if he's
record
making-
this? That's what I want to know. They literally saw the ship and then he's like, I'm getting in a suit. Like,
Oh no, I think it's meant to be like
Pre-recorded.
he recorded this, pre-recorded it
but
a while
it
back.
almost like it was only for this incident.
Yeah, it's
So-
pretty.
Yeah, it was very specific.
Yeah.
The dialogue was
Like, I
very
can understand if it
appropriate
was
for
like
this
a generic message that he's done. It's like, in the event that I am not available, Spock, I would like you to make sure you do this, blah, 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 blah. Like, it wasn't like that. It was kind of like, if we happen to be like, getting attacked by the Tholians, we're going to need you to do this. It's like, they've never met these guys before, as far as I know. So it's like, there's not really, it's very specific to this instance. But anyway, it is what it is, right? Sometimes we go a little too far into these things.
And so,
Yeah, well, I agree with you that the dialogue's a little too specific.
I think Karen's trying to say something here.
Well, I was just going to say it did bring them together. Like that conversation, I did kind of like it because they were realizing that we are gonna have to work together and get through this and beyond. But it was really funny when he's saying, "You're not the captain," and Spock's saying, "Well, I am the captain now."
Yeah. Well, it was basically a space pissing contest. That's really what it was.
That's what it was.
It's like mine's bigger than yours. That kind of thing. Has anybody ever seen the movie Crimson Tide? Okay, so
Yes.
Denzel Washington, Gene Hackman. It's about a submarine commander, and they get orders that are garbled, and both of them disagree on what the orders actually are because they're garbled. So, and it's like a mutiny in a mutiny. This is what this episode reminded me of. So I'm wondering if there's like some sort of draw there. Maybe they made this based on this.
And there's a Star Trek reference
is,
in
yes.
Crimson Tide.
So I'm wondering if now that I've watched this episode again, I'm like, I wonder if they got inspiration for that movie from this episode. So, but anyway, if you guys haven't seen it, it's a good movie.
Yeah. And so that kind of brings them together, and then it's kind of just a race after that. Like McCoy kind of gets the antidote not long after that. They release
at that 45-minute mark, like he always does.
Right, that him and Scotty kind of form this plan to get out. Like they know that they're going to get their engines back just in time to kind of get out of the Tholian Web.
The Tholian Web was
cool. And that's it was cool. It's too bad we didn't get to actually see it sort of come into effect or whatever, because they're just building this like thing so slowly. But it's kind of ominous.
Let's just make a web, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And they're gonna get somehow they're like thrown out of the web like 2 parsecs away. That feels weird. Yeah.
Apparently this web came back in an episode of Enterprise.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask
Star Trek Future Edition.
Karen,
right?
Dad, do you know what happens to the Defiant?
No.
Enlighten them, Dave.
Well, it returns. It returns in an episode of Star Trek Enterprise. There's a sequel to this episode of sorts. And so what happens is the Defiant actually ends up in the Mirror universe. You know the Mirror episode?
Yeah, so in Enterprise,
and that's
Mirror
but
Darkly.
It ends up in 100 years in the past, 100 years in the past in the Mirror universe. So and it ends up in the Mirror version of Enterprise. Like there's a not this Enterprise, another Enterprise. And so I checked that out. It's on Netflix.
What happened to all the crew? Were they all alive?
No, they're all no. The crew's dead. So they just find the ship in the Mirror universe, but it's the Mirror people, so they're all bad. So they're
another
ship. We can use the ship to.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but it's way more advanced than their ship.
Star Trek, yeah.
Yeah, in the Mirror universe and Enterprise, there's a 2-parter called In a Mirror Darkly, and in that episode, it's what if Starfleet was just a military organization, blah blah blah. Same exact thing that we had in the original series as well. Where it's like, they're fighting empire,
it's like an empire
instead of a Discovery Federation. Yeah,
Federation.
Exactly.
Right.
I didn't know if you were going to bring that one up. Actually,
so I would check that out.
No, you're not a fan of it.
I was going to bring it up at the end because I was. But if you want to see they do a Tholian Web in that version, or they start a Tholian Web as well, because there's the Mirror Tholians that are in that. So check that out.
A little bit of trivia.
You can look.
Trivia without
the Mirror Tholians, Dave, are they good?
No,
Dave,
they're about the same.
Tholians good guys or
as they're. The Mirror Tholians are not that different than the main Tholians.
Karen, you're really getting the light there, right?
I really am.
Okay.
I gotta move again. You're coming with me. Let's go.
Okay, come with. We'll go with
Karen's house now.
Yeah. Let's try this room.
There you go. All right.
This is a pretty room.
You just can't do anything. We can never get anything right live. So don't worry about it. We always screw up something.
I had no idea it was going to be like.
You might get Keith in there, so keep it moving.
He's out cutting the grass.
So by the end, when they get out of the Tholian Web and they get Kirk back and everything's back, and they're back and they're back at the end. Like Kirk's like, "How did it go? Did you watch my last orders?" And they both say, "No, we never watched your last orders."
Why would they lie?
We didn't
Why would they lie?
Well, I thought we always said Vulcans are incapable of lying.
Yeah. this gets back to my original point during season 3 with Spock. He does a lot of stuff that's out of character in season 3, so it's weird. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, it's
No.
not consistent, like it is or it isn't. And anyway, and that was the Tholian Web in terms of like the plot of it. And I would check out those Enterprise episodes.
We just said they were very busy.
Those episodes of Enterprise are some of the best episodes of Enterprise. So
those are the two best. So if you're gonna watch anything from Enterprise, and you don't have to watch the rest of the show.
Well, I would recommend it. I like Enterprise. But...
At one part in this, when they were announcing to the crew that Kirk was dead, why was that the entire crew of the ship? I never really thought of it before. How many?
I think that's
No.
It's the main department
who got invited
and stuff like that. It's basically like management up. That's pretty much what it is.
I lost my dreams.
400 people on the ship.
There's 400 people. 400 plus, right?
But even then, that
I think 400 plus.
Yeah, it's like 423 or something is a compliment. But it's what I thought was interesting in that scene was you have Spock and he's like, by the way, he's dead. You can all grieve, but do it on your own time, basically. Like, that's basically what he said. He's like, we're not grieving right now. We got other things to do, but you can grieve in your own time, in your own way. That's fine. It's like, why even have the meeting? Like, what was the point? Just put it over the PA. You're fine.
I know the morale of that room was terrible.
Well, and you look at there's one actress on the far end of Asian descent by the looks of it, and you actually can see the boredom in her eyes. She's like it must have been like 20 takes on this scene or something, because you can tell she's really, really bored at this point. She's like this. It's like, I don't know if she was trying to make it look like she was grieving, but it didn't come off well. But if you ever watch the episode again, look for her. She's in the bottom left-hand corner. It's hilarious. You just look at her and she's just like, it's like, oh, okay. She's not a fan of Spock. Okay. Yeah.
I'll take a look for that. Okay. All right. So any final thoughts on the episode before we rate it?
Yeah, we do rate them between 1 and 10. But because you're new, Karen, we wouldn't have any sort of gauge for you.
Right.
So you can pick any number and it's really fine. So you're
it'll be right.
It would be right. Yeah, exactly. For sure. Well, it's never right or wrong. It's your opinion. But I think the episode's a good episode. It's definitely a must-watch episode of Star Trek: The Original Series. There's a lot of episodes that you can skip. This shouldn't be one of them. This should be something that you should watch.
No, I agree. This is a pretty classic one. Okay, let's start with Dad. Got a rating for this episode?
I'd give this one a good solid 8.75.
Okay, well that will round up to
Pretty good
8.8
episode. Yeah.
Okay, this has an 8.1 on IMDb for those who may want to know.
You put 8.8.
Jody, you have I put 8.75, but I have this set up as only a 2-digit.
For me, I'm going to go with
8.8. 8. That's 8. 8.8 is fine.
Yeah, it's right up there with Return to Tomorrow. I love that episode.
Okay, and Karen.
Well, I would like to go with this is the first episode I've ever seen since I was a kid. And so
really?
For that being the first episode, I would like to have seen a little bit more landscaping. We just saw the 2 ships, so I would have liked to see a little bit more of that and a little bit more of the characters, I would have liked to, seen just a little bit more interaction. So I'd like to go with a firm 7.5.
7.5. Okay, that's a solid rating. So
score.
Hey, this is, and I will give this. I think it's about an 8. Yeah, so I'm gonna go with Jody on this one. Pretty good. It holds up largely, and with a couple weird things. So 8.1 on IMDb. So we're syncing up exactly with that. And so 8.1. So this is tied now for best episode overall with Metamorphosis, which was the Menagerie, which is the sort of the prequel episode. And then just overall, this kind of is right up there with Return to Tomorrow, which is
great episode.
very liked episode. So hey, great. All right. So let's take that down.
But let's be honest, we're following the space hippie episode, so anything's better than that episode.
Yeah, well, it could be that. Dad, do you have an episode in mind to watch next?
Do you happen to remember that episode, Karen?
No, sorry.
The
Yes.
space hippies? You're not missing anything. Don't.
But if you
rewatch
tell me, I probably
I'm
have
gonna
seen most of them. So if you tell me, I
it.
probably.
The guy singing all the time.
Oh my God! Really? Yeah.
It's like a musical. It's brutal. Anyway,
It's called the way. It's called the way to Eden.
Oh my
but
God.
way to eat, and yeah,
we've done
it's
it.
brutal, and I'll never do it again. That was my last remark on the last podcast, Karen. Was I will never watch that episode ever again.
But you guys, the best episode was Pike.
Karen's going to get some of her way for next week. Karen,
That was the menagerie.
Oh my
That was the
God.
one we're talking about.
And the worst thing about that episode was a 2-part episode, and so we had to wait until the next day or week or whatever it was to see the second part.
Well, the one thing that
But you
one
like
thing that we
that
brought
next
up
week.
during
Next
that
week.
review, Karen, was that episode easily could have been one episode. They
Yes.
really dragged that out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was a lot of rehashed footage. So
and Karen, remember the old Batman episodes?
Yeah.
Remember the old Batman episodes where they'd say, "Stay tuned tomorrow, same bat time,
Same bat
channel."
place.
And then you'd find out like Batman will be on a belt going towards a saw or something, right? Well, next week's episode, Karen's going to get her way because we're going to have the city on the edge of forever. You know that one, Mr. Mater?
Whoa, that's a big one.
Mater?
City on the Edge of Forever. Okay. My favorite
it's
original
up there for
series
me
episode.
as well.
The city on the edge of forever.
City on the
Is
Edge
what?
with
Did
Joan
you say,
Collins.
That was Dave that said that, but Joan Collins, yeah,
Joan
Joan
Collins.
Collins was in that episode.
Wow.
Joan Collins, yeah. Joan Collins and Kirk are an item. Yes.
It's a
Remember Joan
time travel
Collins?
episode. Great.
Dynasty.
Okay, so hey,
Dynasty.
join us
She
next
was
Thursday
Dynasty.
as we'll be covering City on the Edge of Forever, which I don't remember what season it's from, but we'll figure that out.
Season 1,
Um,
episode 28.
How
There
do
we
you
go.
know that?
Season 1, episode
I
28.
have a computer in front of me. It's not hard. I just looked it up.
And the other funny thing is, how do you know by the name of the episode what happened in it? I wouldn't even.
Oh, there's only 79
It's-
original.
It's a lot
series
easier to
episodes.
track the original series than it is to track the newer ones.
Oh
The
my,
newer ones have like
Yeah,
200
so they
plus
kind of
episodes.
know them all.
Yeah. Some of them I've forgotten, though.
Yes.
I will tell you.
Okay.
Some of them for a very good reason.
Yeah, no, some of them I've forgotten. So it depends
You'll
what
like
it is.
this
Sometimes
one,
I'm like,
okay.
I really know that episode of them.
It's a good episode. Very
good.
good. Yeah. And you'll like it because there's a lot of Kirk in there.
That's great.
A lot of Kirk in that episode. Very Kirk
A lot
heavy
of Kirk.
episode.
Kirk romance story. Kirk smooch.
Yeah, Smooch and Kirk and everything. It's great.
Romantic Kirk.
Smooch and Kirk. All right.
Well, I don't think he's ever been romantic. But
I think it's the most romantic he is.
Maybe that
So
episode,
I think
yeah.
we're gonna look for it. Okay, everybody. Just to plug everything else, and first I want to just thank our terrific panel tonight for joining us and talking to hear about the Tholian Web. And make sure if you're out there to subscribe. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook. We need to get to 100 subscribers. Tell your friends. You can use all that. You can listen to us on the audio versions. If you have an RSS feed, you can listen to us Apple Podcasts, however you want to do it. We also have some other channels, including Super Mater Brothers Podcasting, where we talked about Survivor and Westworld Season 3. Also, our other channel, Trivial Debates, this Sunday. Check out our monthly edition of Trivial Debates, which is a debate show where we have our friends argue through categories including movies, TVs, music.
it's an
sports,
episode
and
I'm not
more.
on.
It's an episode
For
Jody's
once.
not going to be in, but we're going to have Chris Seymour as the judge, and I think we're in for a doozy. We got my wife Jane competing along with Kevin Millard and Jeff Mater. So I think it's going to be a really
I'm gonna watch it.
good one. Also, here on Live Long and Podcast, we got lots of stuff going on. So tune in tomorrow night for our second edition of Friday Night Live. I'm just going to show you the promotional poster as we are doing our second edition of Star Trek Radio Theater, where we will be recreating the episode Menage a Troy, which is a season 3 episode of The Next Generation from 1990. I will be playing the roles of Riker, Worf, Wright and Grax, and Beverly Crusher. We have my wife Jane, Damon Todd, Wesley Crusher, and Ebor, my brother Jeff.
I can't wait for that. That's going to be the best part. And you better do some sort of thing with your voice.
Oh, I'm going to do something great for that. Jeff Mater going to be playing Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Counselor Deanna Troi, Dr. Farrakha Ferengi, and Lieutenant Commander Jody LaForge. And starring very heavily in this episode is Ashley Millard as Loxana Troi, played by Majel Barrett, who also played Nurse Chapel in this episode that we watched tonight.
Roddenberry's mistress turned wife eventually.
Yes, his mistress turned wife, Majel Barrett, Roddenberry. And Lieutenant Commander Data will also be played by Ashley Millard. So check that out. And then...
What time does it start?
On 9 o'clock.
Out of your minds?
They are clearly out of their mind, yes.
We're out of our... Well, in a good way.
If you notice, I'm not participating in this.
Well, we're working you in.
We're working me in for the next episode, I think.
Yeah, we're contract negotiations are
right now. I think
progress.
it's a 2-for-1 Subway coupon. I think that's my bursary.
Also, here on Live Long and Podcast on Saturday, we're finishing our Star Trek movie review watch. We made it.
God,
Star Trek
I'm so
Beyond
done with the series.
Yeah, we're done with the Star Trek movies. The final. At least the ones that exist. We're watching Star Trek Beyond and talking about that on Saturday. We mentioned Trivial Dates, and next Tuesday, check out our D Space Nine rewatches, where we're doing that every Tuesday night on D Space Nine with Jaemeel Robinson and Jeff Mater. So it's very exciting, very busy here in the Mater Brothers podcasting world. So yes. So that's it. I've plugged.
You got anything else to plug? You got like a Ford dealership you want to plug or something? Like, all right.
No,
good then.
No, but hey, check us. Join us tomorrow night for the next edition.
I think we need to get Ted Mater an Instagram account or something.
Will you be mailing my check for this, or Mater, will you bring it?
We got the LCBO flyer.
It's in the mail.
As the official financer of this show, I will say that the check is in the mail, but I wouldn't expect too many zeros. Just one.
Exactly.
One big zero.
Just one big zero. Yeah.
But we do appreciate you being here.
Okay, everybody. If I think that's it for the Tholian Web, and thanks, and we'll see you tomorrow night. All right. Take care. Thanks.